Are you ready to stop the self-sabotage and create the life you desire? Well, in order for that to happen, you need to break free from the bad beliefs that are holding your success hostage. You need to optimize the stress by turning it into extra energy for success. And those hurtful habits? Well, we need to give that pain a purpose for progress. Welcome to Stop the Self Sabotage and Create the Life You Desire podcast. When should you push forward for progress? When you really should stay up all night and get the project done, or when you should ignore the wisdom of others and say, oh, you think it can't be done? Let me show you. And when is that pushing going to wind up creating more pain for you where you can no longer afford the price that it's charging? Over the last two episodes, we've been looking at truth. In the first episode, we looked at the difficult question, is your life organized around something that is no longer true? And we looked at beliefs that once protected you. It actually helped you and served a purpose, but now it's limiting what's possible in your potential. And then in the second episode, we explored another uncomfortable reality. What do you do when you want something to be true, but it's not? Because sometimes we keep hoping and waiting and pushing and believing that something is going to change. When reality, well, it doesn't want to argue. It just says that it's not the way you want it to be. So let's complete that conversation today with a third question. Are you actually making progress, or are you creating pain? Because I'm going to say all of the women I work with, not a portion, not the majority, all of them. They're not lacking motivation. They're not waiting for life to happen. They're not sitting on the sidelines. And if anything, they are the other direction, an innate drive for progress. Maybe you're like that. You see something you want and you move towards it. You take responsibility. You solve problems. You carry the load. You make things happen. And for a long time for you, those patterns probably worked. But eventually there comes a point when the very thing that once created progress can start creating pain, because there is a hidden cost of high performance. And that's when you develop a plan of overperforming and over-functioning. You become the person who, you'll figure it out. You'll carry the responsibility a lot of times for others because you're the one that solves the problem. You're the one that keeps everyone and everything moving. You hold it all together. And because you've become so capable, which is a pattern, you rarely stop to ask, what is this costing me? What's the price? Because progress without sustainability eventually becomes self-sabotage. The goal gets achieved, the project gets completed. Others around you get taken care of. But you, well, mentally, emotionally, and physically, your system has been sending signals that you're going over a threshold, and we all have thresholds. And it's the point where the challenge, and challenges are meant to bring you out at your very best, actually turns into a problem. And I want you to keep this in mind. Most people live at the level of solving problems instead of designing a life. Think about it. How did you get promoted from one grade to the next in school? You solved problems, and the more problems you solved, the better grade that you got. And the better the grade, the easier it was to move forward, except that life doesn't work like that out of school. The more you move forward, looking for a better grade and the approval of others, the more you're going to find that people will be more than happy to dump what they have on you, allowing you to pick up the slack. And that's when responsibility becomes burden and effort becomes overwhelm, because you do not realize you've crossed that threshold until you're already operating from reaction. Reactions are based on past pain and past painful patterns. Responses are based on future impact. And when you react, you're not responding to what's actually happening right now. You're reacting to what came before it: past disappointments, past failures, past criticism, past rejection, past fear. Your nervous system begins operating from old information. And once you've crossed over the threshold, that's when fear comes in. Because typically, you don't have fear when you're going after a goal. It's only when the old programming and patterns move in that put you into overwhelm that all of a sudden the fear shows up. And when the fear shows up, the world is threatening and urgency increases and pressure bears down even harder and your thinking narrows. And those responses that are based on future impact, well, they ask questions, because if you want better answers, well, you ask better questions. And so what would create the greatest long-term outcome? And what matters the most here? What future are you building? Because responses will have clarity. But when you're in a reactive state, when you've crossed over that threshold, you cannot see the additional opportunities around you because your mind is running a past painful pattern. A reaction is when pressure chooses for you how you'll react. A response is when you choose, even if there is pressure. I was working with a client recently who is creating an online teaching program. And to do so, she has to film a series of videos. And she found herself asking a very familiar question: should I stay up all night and get this done? Because progress felt slow and the finish line was so far away. Pressure was building. And in the moment, we explored something interesting. The very product she was creating was designed to help people slow down enough to see options, to think clearly, to evaluate possibilities and potential, to make conscious choices based on all that. Yet the environment she was about to create for herself was the exact opposite: pressure, urgency, tunnel vision, force. And here's what's significant. The lesson is not that staying up all night is always wrong, because sometimes we do need to sprint. We do push, and we make temporary sacrifices. The better question becomes, am I choosing this consciously, or am I being driven by being over my threshold? I can choose to work a few extra hours because it serves my outcome. Or I can say, I'm terrified of falling behind and I don't know how to stop. One is intentional. One is reactive. One comes from response, the other from overwhelm. So the question became, well, is she willing to create an environment for herself that she would never recommend to the people she's trying to help? Because often we offer more compassion, wisdom, and sustainability to others than we offer ourselves. So there are going to be warning signs that you're approaching the threshold. And sometimes you can miss the early indicators. So, cognitive signs, there's difficulty concentrating, forgetfulness, decision fatigue, difficulty prioritizing. Everything feels equally urgent. It's tunnel vision. Emotional signs, anxiety, irritability, resentment, feeling trapped, hopelessness, emotional exhaustion. Behavioral signs, working harder but accomplishing less, taking responsibility for everyone, constant problem solving, difficulty resting, and pushing harder every time something feels difficult. You can also experience poor sleep, fatigue, headaches, muscle tension, digestive issues, and feeling wired as well as exhausted at the same time. These signs are not evidence that you need to push harder. They are simply feedback. Let me share with you about feedback. So last September, I experienced a challenge where I had to rely on an old pattern, but that old pattern wound up creating more pain, but I didn't have any other options at the time. So last September, I fell out on a trail, and when I did, I face planted onto a boulder and jammed my left shoulder into it. I immediately went to urgent care. They took x-rays. Nothing was broken. Nothing was dislocated. But when I got in the car to drive myself to urgent care, I couldn't lift that arm to close my door. And the experts told me, you're okay. And that was on a Friday afternoon. That Monday, I was scheduled to lead a 5-hour car caravan for a family trip that I had organized and paid for. So I pushed through because that's what responsible people do, right? I mean, I had consulted the experts. I followed the instructions. I used ice and I kept going. And it was one of the most painful experiences in my entire life. So when I got home from the trip, my doctor referred me to an orthopedic surgeon and I waited, and then I had an MRI, and then there was more waiting. And 5 weeks after my fall, the surgeon walks into the room and says, you blew your shoulder apart. 3 of the 4 tendons that should have been attached were no longer attached from my arm to my shoulder. In fact, they weren't even attached to bone. And what I became aware of wasn't that I pushed through. What I became aware of, that I was using the only map I had available to navigate that terrain. Every authority figure was telling me I was okay. So I continued operating from that map. The breakthrough came later, not because I stopped listening to experts, but because I learned something new. And I learned to combine their expertise with my own experience. So 3 months after my surgery, when I started physical therapy, I was able to invest my intention differently. If something felt wrong, I did not ignore it. If something did not fit my experience, I became curious. And I learned to trust feedback, not fear, not assumptions, feedback. Expertise is information. Experience is formation. Wisdom is learning how to integrate both, which is the reason why more effort isn't always the answer, because you're using a map of what worked once before, but it can't take you any farther. If progress slows, well, sometimes the answer is you need to take more action. Sometimes it's true, but then other times it's not. Sometimes progress slows because your strategy has reached its limit. Sometimes progress slows because your nervous system is overloaded. You're carrying too much. And sometimes progress slows because what you're going through is asking for discernment instead of determination, because not every obstacle requires force. Some require evaluation, some adjustment, other times recovery, a new strategy, a completely different perspective. By the way, if this is resonating with you, I've actually created a hypnosis session to begin to build a foundation of fulfillment for you. And it's going to help you release outdated truths, let go of a misaligned reality, and stop the painful push. So you can claim it by going to dawnlandrum.com and looking for the tab that says Gifted Hypnosis Session. All right. So there is a pause that creates progress. A pause isn't quitting or weakness or giving up. It is where wisdom can live. So when you feel yourself approaching the threshold, you want to look at not the story, not the fear that might begin to show up, not the prediction, but instead you want to look at, what is this costing me? Because pain can become suffering when feedback is ignored. So what is this costing you? Mentally, emotionally, physically, relationally? Is it sustainable? Can you continue paying this price for another 6 months, a year? If you can no longer afford that price, then you're operating from reaction, trying to escape discomfort instead of intentionally creating a future. And that's when you look at responses. What would progress look like if you did not have to self-sabotage? Nobody knows you better than you know yourself. Coaches can guide you, therapists can support you, doctors can diagnose, trainers can teach, mentors can share their experience, but none of them live inside your body and experience your emotions and carry your history. Their job is not to replace your judgment. Their job is to help you refine it. Real progress is not measured only by what you achieve. It's who you become. It's who you reveal within you while achieving it. And if reaching that goal requires you sacrificing your peace, your health, your relationships, your joy, your ability to think clearly, the price is not giving you a return on your investment. It's continuing to steal out of your bank, holding your brilliance. The purpose of progress is for you to be able to design a life you want to live. And sometimes that does mean pushing through. Sometimes it means pausing and seeing what another option is, another opportunity. So as you move through this week, I want you to consider a question. Are you creating progress, or are you going back to painful patterns? If you've crossed the threshold into overwhelm, do not automatically assume you need to push harder. Pause, evaluate, listen to the feedback. The future that you desire, well, it deserves more than another cycle of exhaustion. It deserves a sustainable path forward. Before you go, I have a gift for you. If you've been listening to these episodes and finding yourself questioning old beliefs, wrestling with difficult realities, and wondering how to move forward without pushing yourself into exhaustion, I've created a gifted hypnosis experience called Renewal Reset. It's designed to help you release those outdated truths, let go of misaligned hopes, and stop the painful pushing that so often keeps you stuck. This guided experience will help you quiet the noise, reconnect with your own wisdom, and create forward movement from a place of clarity rather than pressure. You can claim your gifted hypnosis experience at dawnlandrum.com and then click on the tab that says gifted hypnosis experience, or it might say free. That's dawnlandrum.com. And until next time, blessings on your brilliance and how you bring the beauty of you to the world around all of us.